This episode is brought to you by Merrill. Join one of the most iconic names in wealth management, Merrill. You'll be part of a dynamic team of advisors and specialists working hard every day to grow their clients' wealth. And with the support of best-in-class research, advanced digital tools, and the resources of a global institution, it's truly an opportunity you can be bullish about. Learn more at careers.bankofamerica.com. Copyright 2024, Bank of America Corporation.
Listen in. Starbucks. It's a great day for coffee.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about some horror movies. And I'm going to try to be like a film critic. Enjoy.
Were you calling to me from outside of a dream? I wanna live. I wanna love you a little longer. I was invincible many years ago, and I was so much stronger.
Welcome to another Age of Jeremy Lofi episode. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla. I am the co-founder, yada, yada, yada. You might know me from some businesses such as 3-2 Warrior Academy, Age of Radio, Q Financial, Merlin, the smartest way to track your crypto. And this is one of my lo-fi episodes. So what I try to do in this episode is record from non-conventional means or things that I try to piece together. Right now, I'm recording on my Zune. Man, that was a Microsoft failure, wasn't it? They didn't think that Apple knew what they were doing. They were wrong. 100% wrong. Which is funny because I watched Steve Ballmer play. Well, he owns the Los Angeles Clippers, and he was one of the. He ended up getting a lot of shares in Microsoft, but he wasn't one of the founders. But he was the person that ran Microsoft in the early days, and then for a lot of it after Bill Gates became the chief technology officer. And he spent $1.5 billion, or maybe he didn't, but a lot of money went into the new Clippers stadium, and the Suns beat them on their opening night. So go Suns. No offense to anybody that's out there that lives in Los Angeles. I think that Los Angeles has a lot of cool cultural stuff. I don't know. I'm feeling a lot more New York-y than I am Los Angeles-y. I've been to both places. I actually like New York a lot more than I thought that I would, and I like it more than I like Los Angeles. But I think like the people in Los Angeles seem to be maybe more friendly on the West Coast. And San Diego is one of my favorite places. But that's not the point. The point is that I'm recording on my Zoom H1N, which is a $99 device. Have an SD card. You can take that SD card out. You can put it into a something like Cubase, which is what I do. And you can make amazing podcasts starting at $99. And that's the reason why I do this. I also do this to separate it from my main show, which is the stuff that I have going on with business, what's going on in the world, what's going on with social media that I'm finding out. And then we'll also try to get some interviews one day again. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. But lo-fi is where I get to like talk about the cultural stuff that I want to talk about, kind of ramble a little bit about the things that I want to ramble about, share the things that I want to share about. And that is what this podcast episode is about. Or this, I guess, mini episode. They're not mini episodes. They're just like extra episodes, side quest episodes. In fact, I used to call them side quests. Maybe we'll bring back the side quest again. There is a TikTok star, Cal. I think that's his name. He has a DJ group. Like he's a DJ, him and another guy, and they call it Side Quest. I think that's a fantastic name. I think that's amazing. I'm really excited about that and for them to be successful. One of the things that I've never understood from people is that they don't want other people to be successful. I love seeing people be successful. And more importantly, I love these kids that are able to be in a world that if I tried harder when I was their age, or I had a different, support system around me. You know, I'm very successful. I'm not saying that, but man, I'm really happy that they get to be themselves and they get to be on YouTube and they get to be on social media. I think there's a darker side to being a social media star, but I think overall, I think that's just a great opportunity for people and to allow these kids to be the people that they want to be, which I'm really happy for them about that. But what I wanted to do in this episode, because this is the first of 2 Halloween episodes, so you're getting this one Halloween morning, and you'll get another one Halloween night, or maybe on the Friday, I don't know. But if you were listening to this and you live in Arizona, and you're listening to this on the Thursday of Halloween, tomorrow on the Friday, I'm going to be at UwuCon. I'm going to be talking and doing a little I don't know, speech, I guess, about why everyone should have a podcast. I think that everybody should have a podcast. I'm not saying that everybody's going to become a huge star, right? Like me. I'm not really a huge star, but a huge star. But you have things that you want to share with the world, and podcasting is one of the best mediums, in my opinion, to do it. Mediums. And so what I wanted to talk about, I wanted to do artsy, pretentious shit, for lack of a better way to say it, are the things that I enjoy. In fact, my mom says that I'm pretentious. And to be honest, if I have my way and the more money that I get, I'm assuming the more pretentious that I would get. And by pretentious, I mean, not necessarily that I'm pretentious, but I like things that pretentious people like. I think that's one of the reasons why I love Frasier. I'm not really big into suits. I love tattoos and I love piercings, which is maybe one of the biggest things that might separate me from pretentious people. But as far as like pretentious stuff like the opera and classical music, and the arts and photography, and antiques and sculptures and all of that stuff, those are all the things that I enjoy. And one of those things that I also enjoy is like a good film critic review. I think I've been diving deeper into New York Times. In fact, I'm probably going to buy a bunch of shares in New York Times. I've been researching the board, who's running the New York Times, the things that they're doing. I have 2 New York Times apps that I pay for. I'll probably get a subscription, have that bad boy delivered to my house, get an actual physical New York Times newspaper. Warren Buffett does the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, his Ohio paper. I have apps for the Wall Street Journal and the Arizona Central, but I need to get the app on my phone so it can push notifications to me. But that's a different story. I have it on my iPad. Love me some iPad. Look, I don't want to get off track here. I loved when I was growing up watching films, reading about films. I think journalism is amazing. And one of the things that I've been starting to notice is that living in my own little bubble inside of my little office here in Glendale, Arizona, and working on getting another office here in Glendale, Arizona. By the way, I'm in my home office in Glendale, Arizona, but I want a physical office in Glendale, Arizona, and I don't go to my other office in Mesa, Arizona, that I would really, really like to spend time. What's the word? Really spend time. So I've been in a bubble, right? Because I'm just in here. I'm in my little world. I work. I'm at my house. I go to the gym, come home. I read the newspapers and stuff, but I'm not engaged in like the cultural world or the pop culture world or, reading about film and reading journal articles about reviews about stuff, because I just have so much stuff going on that I don't have the time for that. But one of the things that I did enjoy when I was growing up, and I had a great conversation with my friend Charlie about it, or Chuck, who I went and saw Bowling for Soup with. Let's see, you're listening to this on Thursday, so Saturday before Halloween. And I was able to talk to him, and it was really good, fun to talk to someone about art and about like film and about recording stuff and about music and, creation. Because the way in which we create in the world that I'm in now is a lot different. It's not from an artistic stance. It's about providing information out to the world. Even the show Mercury that we do on the Age of Radioverse Instagram, that's just a news thing. There's nothing artsy about it. We can work to make the show better, and we're going to make the show better and keep to the way that I want the show to feel and to sound and to be. but it's not like an art show, and neither is the main episodes of my podcast, which is good because I don't mind. I love talking about business. It's a love language for me. I love helping people with their business, helping them with their taxes. I really enjoy that part. And so, but for me personally, as far as being into culture, into film, and foreign films and all of that pretentious stuff, I guess. I don't get to do that a lot. And so I wanted to take some time to actually do some reviews on some horror movies because I think movies are amazing. And so I've been trying to find more ways to relax when I'm not working. Still want to get to about that 60 to 80 hours a week work. But, and this includes some of those hours, right? Because this is for like creation. So a mix between work and creating, right? And so I wanted to talk about movies because I was trying to relax, and I realized when I'm watching sports, I half zone out, right? I'm half into the game, half on my phone, half this, right? Not really present 100% during the game. But where I find myself 100% involved is with movies. And it just reminded me how much I love film and movies and acting. And I wanted to watch some horror movies that I asked everybody about what they recommend. And I got some recommendations. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is get everybody into my broadcast channel on Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram at Age of Jeremy, go to the profile. There's a broadcast channel called Dope Updates. I ask for your guys' advice, your guys' opinions on things. And this is where I got the some of the movies to watch. So I'm gonna go through some of these horror movies that I watch. I had a fantastic time watching them. I had a fantastic time thinking about them. I have no idea how to be a film critic. I'm gonna do my best not to do any spoilers. I'm gonna talk about each of them, and I hope that you enjoy. And I hope that you go and watch some of these. And I will recommend the ones that I think that you should watch over maybe some of the other ones, or maybe in an order in which you should watch them. And so the first one I'm going to start with, because I'm going to do them in order in which I watched them, was It Chapter 1, which was the new one that was created with Bill Skarsgård. I am horrible at everybody's name, so I could never be a real film critic because I would butcher everybody's name and I would not even practice on how to say the names of the people. And so because of that makes it a little bit where I suck at being a film critic because I have no one's name. But it was directed by Andy Muschietti, who I've never heard of before. It's obviously It by Stephen King, which is usually rated as his number one book. I've read most of it. I've at least read the part where they're the children. So if you don't know, the basic story is there's a group of children that are eaten and antagonized by this clown, and it comes back every 30 years or 27 years, depending on which movie you're watching. Or I don't remember what it was in the book, but in this movie, it was 27 years. And so it comes out and it feasts on the children. Then it goes back after a period of time, I guess, and then it comes back after another 27 years. So chapter 1 takes place when they're kids, and chapter 2 takes place when they're adults. And I will say a few things about this. I will say that if you're going to, they're worth watching. I think that you would watch them, especially if you like horror movies. If you're freaky at clowns, you might not want to watch them. I think that this one did a really good job. Bill Skarsgård. I got to find his name. I need to find out how you say his name. Because the reason why I can't say his name because I can't picture it. Bill Skarsgård. Bill Skarsgård. Okay, so Bill Skarsgård plays Pennywise, which is the clown. Also a great punk band named Pennywise. And so go check out Pennywise, the band. And so he does a fantastic job. Okay, so I think that his acting is pretty on point for the craziness of the clown, the way in which the clown is sporadic, the way in which he changes his voice, the movements that he does as Pennywise, I think is really, really good. So I think that Bill Skarsgård does good as Pennywise. Where I think that they have a really big miss, and so I'm going to, again, this is just me sharing my thoughts on it. I don't have anything super planned, so just bear with me. So one of the biggest problems that I had with the movie was the special effects and the way in which they did the, so in chapter 1, first off, in chapter 1, the special effects are much better, in my opinion, than in chapter 2. Okay. I don't know if that was a budget situation. Just the way in which they haunted the kids as they were trying to figure out what was going on, and the way in which Pennywise went after them in different forms, I think was much better in the first one than in the second one. And the other cool thing about the first movie that I think is worth noting is that the way in which the adventure of the kids takes place. So there's like, the majority of them are friends. There's a female, and then there's another male boy that kind of comes into the group. They call themselves the Losers Club. And so they are all experiencing Pennywise in different dynamics throughout the movie. And then they all kind of like meet up more so and say, hey, I've been haunted by this guy. I've been haunted by this guy. I've been haunted by this guy. And that's kind of when they dive deep into what's going on. And so that makes the movie really interesting from my perspective, because if you've watched Goonies, it's really cool having these kids be the ones that are the protagonists inside of this movie where they're fighting evil. And that is something that I always enjoy watching, is when the children band together and they end up fighting the evil, because they're the ones that are easier to believe the thing that's happening, where the adults have a harder time believing the thing, or in some cases the adults can't even fathom the thing or understand the thing, and the thing doesn't show themselves to the adults, and so it's only for the children. And so from that regard, I think is one of the biggest things that makes chapter 1 better than chapter 2. Because in chapter 2, they are already adults. And I don't like the fact that he kind of does, I don't know, I can't remember if this is how Stephen King did it in the book and exactly what happened in the original with Tim Curry. But the way in which it exists is that Pennywise to them doesn't exist when they're adults. They have these vague memories of what took place when they were kids. And one of the main characters in it, let me go find the characters. I think it's not Beverly, it's not Richie, it's not Edward, it's not Stan, it's Mike. So Mike has been staying in that town his whole life to, make sure that they're prepared for when Pennywise comes back. So Mike remembers everything because he never left the town. When you leave the town, your memories kind of become vague from it. And so because of that, it's kind of like, in the second part or in chapter 2, they're trying to replicate the same thing that happened in chapter 1, where they're all experiencing Pennywise in a different way, and then they all meet up. So it's almost like the movies are kind of like the same, in my opinion, where like the kids have to remember. So in the first one, the kids have to have their experiences. They all come together and they talk about it, and then they go and fight Pennywise. In the second one, they all forget about it. They all have to do something to get this artifact to remember Pennywise, and then they all come together and then they fight Pennywise. So to me, it's kind of like the same movie almost. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I didn't really care for chapter 2, because it just felt like I was watching chapter 1, but they were adults. Okay. So that's one thing that I would just kind of recommend. I'm trying not to do so many spoilers on what's going on, so you go and watch it. They're still worth watching. Like, you should watch chapter 1 and chapter 2 and take your own opinion on it. But like, for me, chapter 1 is much better, just because of the special effects, because of how the story goes, because of the pace of the story that doesn't exist in chapter 2. And that's one of the biggest problems that I had with it. Now, I don't have any like information on whether or not this one is better than the first one. I really liked the first made-for-TV movie in 2 parts, which was the original that had Tim Curry as Pennywise, because Tim Curry is one of my favorite actors. So I can't really say that if I thought this one was better or worse. Like, I'm just nostalgically, the original is one of my favorite things to go back to and watch whenever it's on or whenever I see it. I have no problem with that. So from that perspective, I think you should watch chapter 1, watch chapter 2, then maybe go back. If you haven't seen the original and find the original, they're both on HBO Max. Or all of them are on HBO Max. So if you have Max, you can go and check it out. And I really recommend them because they're probably, as far as like the overall storyline, it's really good. I didn't give you like any spoilers for the full storyline. So I recommend that you go and watch it. And I think that it's worth a good watching it maybe during Halloween time or in October when we're taking out all of our scary movies, when we're trying to find the scary stuff to watch. Good time to start it. So the next one that I watch, and real quick, so Creator Trey recommended that I watch it chapter 1 and 2. He hasn't seen it. Creator Trey doesn't like horror stuff all that much. I like horror stuff. I like more horror stuff. Just so you know, that's more cult oriented. Like Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorite movies. Hereditary is one of my favorite movies, and if you haven't seen either of those, go watch them. Especially because there's cults involved with them, and that's one of the main reasons why I like them. And then one of my favorite movies is Rope, but that's more of a suspense rather than like a horror movie. So yeah, I would say watch Rope and Rosemary's Babies and Hereditary. They're fantastic. So the next one that I watched was the remake of Salem's Lot. I watched the original Salem's Lot by Stephen King, and essentially it is a movie where children go missing and dying, and then the town is plagued by vampires, and the town kind of knows it's been plagued by vampires, and then they fight vampires. So again, one of the things that I did like about Salem's Lot that I think was really important was I thought they did a really good use. I think that the way they did the vampires, how the vampires move and how the vampires fly, I think was really, really cool. I also like the fact that they are children that are being taken and turned into vampires, and they didn't shy away from that in the movie. And even with the graphic nature of the scenes, I thought that they did really good with them being children and being the vampires. The thing that I would say was one of my favorite things about Salem's Lot is, and again, this is just because I like this style of bringing people together, because it reminds me of a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, is that when you have all of the, again, very similar Stephen King-esque, like bringing people together, they're all experiencing the vampires in different points, and then they all end up meeting up about the vampire situation, and then they go on and they take on the vampire situation. So that's one of my favorite things about the movie. Real quick, just from from a film perspective, real quick about chapter 1 and chapter 2. One of the things that I did that was very difficult for me is that I believe that the movie's set in the 80s-ish, the chapter 1. I don't like it when they don't use. It doesn't need to be 100% like the 80s, but the way in which you use your lenses and this, it didn't feel like I was in the 80s. It felt like I was in I felt like it was now, but everybody was just dressed like they were in the 80s, if that makes sense. Some the way in which they use, it's either the camera or the lenses that they use in the movie. And again, I don't have the vernacular anymore to explain this as well as I would like. But it's when there are movies where you feel like you're in that time frame because of the lenses that they're choosing and the way that they're doing the cinematography. I didn't feel that in chapter 1 and chapter 2. So it felt, or chapter 1 at least, I felt like, okay, they had New Kids on the Block was a big thing in the movie. So what was that, late 80s into the 90s? And So that was a big thing, but it didn't feel like I was in the 80s. It just felt like I was with people today that were wearing and listening to stuff in the 80s. If you watch it, I think you'll kind of get what I mean by that. So back to Salem's Lot. The other thing that I think that was really good with the story of Salem's Lot is that I'm not going to say who dies or whatever, but when you have. It's really good. One of the things that I enjoy the most is when the protagonist, you have multiple protagonists, and then you kind of lose them throughout the story. But then you have the main protagonist. So there's protagonists that you think that you might not lose, and then they lose, and it's fuck, I really like that person. I wish that hadn't happened, and then it brings you more involved with the story about how are they going to get over this? How is this going to work? And I think that the remake of Salem's Lot did that very well. And again, that is on HBO Max. So it's a movie about a town that gets taken over by vampires. And I would recommend watching it because it has some really good, like, I guess like friendship dynamics in it, how friends are going to help their other friends. It's a really good like theme that's in the movie, because they have friends that are turned into vampires, and the loyalty that friends have to other, friends, especially when you're children. And then that kind of like, they try to, do that from an adult perspective, about like, how are you going to get revenge for this? Is it worth getting that revenge for that? Is it worth even fighting for something? When everything seems, all hope seems lost, how are you going to do that? And then how am I as an adult going to manage taking care of a child in this type of situation who seems to be better in this situation than I am? And I think that they do that pretty well, and it's pretty entertaining. So I would recommend watching it. I probably wouldn't watch it, chapters 1, definitely I would go back and watch every, maybe every October, or every other October, when we pull out all the horror movies and, try to spend every night watching something scary. Salem's Lot, I probably wouldn't go back to it, to be honest. Like, it was a good movie, but it's just it's just like good to watch that one time. It's not something that I feel that I at least would go back to. And I can't see someone going back to it over and over. It's just not that rememberable or memorable for me. Now, one movie that I will go back to over and over, and so this was from someone that was in the channel, Jameer. He was in the broadcast channel. His dad watches this movie every single year. It's called Tales from the Hood. It was made in 1995, produced by Spike Lee, and I had totally forgot about this movie. It is freaking fantastic. This movie you should watch every single Halloween for the rest of your life. So essentially the plot is it's about these 3 kids that are going to meet in a mortuary, and they are they're in a gang. They're going to meet this gentleman in a mortuary to pick up, I can't remember what it is, like drugs or like pick something up. And then he tells them all of these different stories of weird shit that happens. And so these 3 stories that take place, 3 or 4 stories that take place. And it leads to just a fun, really like twisted ending. And I think this movie is super important because, especially because Spike Lee produced, I don't know who directed it. Let me look up. I'm in front of my computer right now. I'm going to look up who directed Tales from the Hood, because a lot of movies at this time, they were really focused, especially when they had people in the African American community or the Black community. They were really focused on telling these stories about how it's not, for lack of a better way to say it, not to be good in a gang. And I feel that this is kind of like what they were trying to do with this. Like, it's funny, it's creepy, it's a really good story, and it has to do with these gang members, and it has this like, I don't want to spoil the movie, but it's got a really cool like point to the movie that they do at the end of it in regards to being in a gang and what kind of happens with people that are maybe gang members or bad people. And so I think that he does a really good job. So the director is George Arthur. He goes by George Arthur Kundiev. He goes by Rusty. And so he actually did the Chappelle Show from 2003 to 2006. He had a movie in 1993 called Fear of a Black Cat, and then Tales from the Hood. And so it's just worth watching it, not only because, it's kind of, it's humorous, but it's an easy watch. And one of the things that I thought was weird about it, because I was watching all these movies, like whatever cameras he used, whatever lenses that he used in this movie, like the movie just felt like it was in the 90s. Which is fine because it was in the 90s and it obviously takes place in the 90s. It was really crisp. The acting was really, really good, even though it was funny. They're like the special effects were like overdone. It was just regular special effects, nothing crazy, because it was in the mid 90s. And when I tell this to people, everybody's like, well, it's because the 90s were the best. I don't necessarily think like everything was the best in the 90s because I grew up in it. It's just like this like watching this movie, I was like, it was fun to watch a movie that just wasn't, surrounded by a bunch of like special effects that were overdone and over the top, which I feel like we get in a lot of movies. He also did, he was in Sprung. He also wrote and directed Sprung. He did Tales from the Hood 2 in 2018. He did some Days of Our Lives. He was in a Days of Our Lives role. And he did Chappelle Show. I don't know if he directed the Chappelle Show. Did he direct it? So he directed Tales from the Hood 2 and Tales from the Hood 3. Movie 43. He did movie 43. He did the segment Victory's Glory. He did a movie called Chocolate News. I don't know. He did the Chappelle Show, 25 episodes he directed from 2003 to 2006. So was he the director for the whole thing, I guess? I think it's worth checking out, but it's really good. And so I think I would watch this every single year. Next year, I might check out Tales from the Hood 2 and 3. So again, check out It Chapter 1, It Chapter 2, Salem's Lot, and check out Tales from the Hood. And then the last thing that I watched, I actually heard about this from Kevin Bacon. I didn't know this was a trilogy. And he recommended that, so Kevin Bacon did this reel, and in the reel he said, I'm going to list my 20 favorite movies, or horror movies for Halloween. And he listed Maxxxine. Now, I didn't know at the time that he was in Maxxxine, but he said that it was a trilogy from X, Pearl, Maxxxine. And so I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to watch those because I got the to watch It Chapters 1 and 2, to watch Salem's Lot. No, Salem's Lot I chose to watch, and then to watch Tales from the Hood. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch these movies because I had seen the previews for Pearl. I didn't know what the hell it was. I had never heard of X because apparently I don't know what the hell's going on in the world. And then I had seen Maxxxine was coming to HBO. And so if you don't know the story is essentially breakdown of the story real quick without giving any spoilers. So a bunch of adults go and try to make a porno movie at a house that they didn't tell the people that were renting it. It was some older folks, two older folks, Pearl and what's the gentleman's name? Starts with an H, I think. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find the name. So Pearl is the wife of what's the guy? Howard. And so Pearl and Howard they're in their I want to say at least 70s, maybe in their 80s. And they have a house and they have a barn and an outhouse and a house where there's other rooms. So they rent the other rooms. They don't know that they're making a porno movie. And Pearl is very sexually starved. And essentially it leads to some, I got to spoil this one, so I apologize. You should still go watch it. It leads to Pearl and Howard murdering all of them except for Maxxxine. And so the movie is, so that's what happens in the first one. In the second one, it's about the story of Pearl and kind of like who she is, how she became to be, how she was. And I won't tell you what happens in that one. What I will say is Pearl is by far the best one out of X and Maxxxine, in my opinion. There are some really intense scenes with Mia Goth where she does a one take. At least it looks like. I think it's a one take because I watched it. Or she does this monologue confessing some stuff to her sister-in-law. It is by far worth watching just for that scene to see how amazing of an actress Mia Goth is, which I think she is just fantastic in Pearl. And so I highly recommend that you at least watch Pearl, and you don't need to watch X to watch Pearl. You can watch Pearl as a one-off because it's about the murderer in X. And then to finish off the trilogy, it's Maxxxine. Maxxxine from X, she survives the murders. She becomes a big porn star, and then she gets a break to be in horror movies. And then this cult shows up, which is one of the things that I did like about it. And then I'll tell you about some of the things that are really interesting in it, and then some of the things that I think could have been better. This cult shows up that leads to these murders, and it's in the midst of the Night Stalker in Los Angeles. And so it's kind of like, does this have to do with the Night Stalker? Does it not have to do with the Night Stalker? And it looked like he had a bigger budget for Maxxxine because there was bigger stars in it. And so I'll talk to you what my thoughts were on that and having them in it. So let's go for the first one. So Mia Goth is fantastic in all of them. The one that I think is the best is Pearl. One of the things that I think that Ty West does really, really good, who's the creator and the writer and director of these, is he does these snips of things happening. So for example, rather than like having like scaring people or trying to create fear from one event happening to like someone popping out of, say, a closet or something, what he does is like he like uses like flashes to other scenes, like in these really quick hit snippets, to show you what's going on in another scene that is horror while the other scene is taking place. So for example, if like, let's say there's a murder that's going on outside, and someone's lying in bed, and he's got the camera focused on the person that's lying in the bed, and they're like kind of waking up, and then all of a sudden you'll just see a flash to like someone getting their eyes stabbed or something like that. That's not exactly what happens in the movie, but that's like an example of what I'm saying. And I think that does really good to create this sense of suspense and fear when you're watching it. Like, you don't know what's going to happen, because on top of that, you don't know if that thing of that snippet was something that had previously happened that he wanted you to know about, or if it was something that was happening right there, because then that person could show up right then and there at the other, at that other moment with the person that was rolling up in the bed, and you wouldn't know because there was no like timetable of when the snippet was happening. And he uses this for flashbacks in Maxxxine, where there's like trauma or something, and it just flashes back to the other scene that are the scariest moments without any like context leading up to it. And so he can get you with that fright or that hit of suspense from even previous scenes, which he does in Maxxxine. And I think that was something that he did really, really well. For Pearl, I think what he does really, really well. So the other thing that I think that he does really well, which is worth noting, is that when there's like, because these movies take place, at least the first two, X and Pearl, they take place in like one area or like one set, essentially. When you're watching someone like running, like you'll watch them like do the entire running of the horror event that's taking place. So if someone needs to run from the barn or from the outhouse place to the main house, and there's like someone coming up from another area, that scene is set where it's just like one shot where all of this stuff is taking place without a cut. And so it provides for like, okay, is this person going to get out of it? Are they going to meet up at this spot? Is this person going to kill them? What's going to happen? And I think that works better than cutting back and forth. Because one of the things that I hate one of the things that I think that I enjoy anyway, I enjoy when there's just one shot scenes of an event taking place without having to cut from other things. And I think that when you do that, like in a forest or in a barn or in, the on a farm, like they do in X, I think that it adds much more to the expense. The other thing too is that when you can create depth from a specific shot. So there's like a really cool scene in X where Howard's getting home and Pearl and Maxxxine have this weird sexual exchange type of situation, and Pearl has to sneak out, and you watch her sneak out, but then the way that it's set up, you can still see Howard doing the things that he's doing as he's sneaking, because he created depth from where the person was at the front of the shot, and then someone being in the back of the shot. And so I think from like a camera perspective, or from, I don't know, from a film perspective, just watching the movie to how he uses the cameras, and how he sets up the shots and the angles, I think is worth watching for X and Pearl. Like, for example, when there's a scene where like Pearl has to go to the market and or go to town, he like shows the scene of the corn, and then you see Pearl, right? Because Pearl takes place in 1913, and the X takes place in the 70s, and then Maxxxine takes place in the 80s. And so you see the shot of the corn, and then you see her come into play with her bike, and then she just goes across, and you don't need to provide any other context of how long the ride was. And I think this works really, really good, especially if you don't have a large budget and you need to like set up a shot where it's a long way from one thing. So like, even though it was just the one riding of the corn, or maybe two shots of her going from one screen and then showing another screen, you could still feel that she was going a long way, even though it was probably just a movie set of the corn, or just a set of corn that they found somewhere to do this one shot. And I think that that's really cool, because they do it going forward, and then they do it also going from the, when she goes back. And so this provides really great, I guess, ability to see just how far, like, you feel that it was really far from where the farm was to where the town was, where she had to go and get stuff. So I think that just watching the way in which the shots that he uses for the movie is really worth watching. And then Maxxxine, you kind of lose some of that, and that's one of the problems that I have with Maxxxine. Some of my favorite actor, he's one of my favorite actors, and I always forget his name. Give me 1 second. Let me go to. Bobby Cannavale. So he was in, I don't know, he's been in a bunch of movies. You will know him from all kinds of stuff if you see him. One of my favorite actors. He was in it. He was really good. Did he need to be in it? Probably not. They could have got a different actor to play that, and it would have been just as good. But then you have Giancarlo Esposito in it. Like, did it have to be Giancarlo Esposito? No. Did it have to be Kevin Bacon? It could have just been just as good without like bigger stars, which you didn't have in the first two movies. But then it feels like, okay, we got a budget because these other two went good, so let's get these big stars in it, which you like don't really need them to have big stars. And I feel like you lost the grittiness of it being an independent movie having those other stars in it. And I love those actors. Like, I love Kevin Bacon, I love Giancarlo Esposito, I love Bobby Cannavale. I mean, Halsey's in it. Like, why does she need to be in it? The singer, I'm probably saying her name wrong. And that's one of the things, like, out of the three of them, Maxxxine, I think, was like probably the worst. So if you have to watch one of them, 100% watch Pearl. And then if you watch X. But Pearl has some really, like, the shots. There's a shot where her sister-in-law's running, and she's running down the hill. And so you have the depth of her running from the hill from the farmhouse, because they both take place on the same farmhouse, because she lives in the same farmhouse, right? And this kind of explains why they might still be in the same farmhouse, and her giving up her dream and things like that. And so her sister-in-law is like running down. You see her pick up this hatchet, and she's running down after her, or an axe, running down after her sister-in-law. And it's just beautiful, because it's just this one shot, and it provides this feel like, is she going to get away? Is she catching up? Okay, she's going to catch away. And then something happens. And then, Pearl catches up with her. And again, Pearl is also played by Mia Goth. So Mia Goth plays the main character in them, even though she's playing a different character in Pearl than she did in X. But she also plays Pearl in X, but as older. Okay. And so it's something to really think about, to watch just for that. So X and Pearl, I believe, were released the same year, and then obviously they did well, so then they got the budget probably, and then they created Maxxxine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with like getting a budget for a movie, but like I feel like I feel like if they had the grittiness in it, it could have been done better. The one thing I will say that he did do good is, and I wanted to bring this up, this is why I mentioned it in it. When I was watching Maxxxine, I felt like I was in the 80s. I felt like I was watching a movie that was made in the 80s, about an event that was taking place in the 80s, and that has to do with the cameras that were used, the cinematography that was used, which he did a fantastic job with. And so I also think that one of the things that I did like about Maxxxine was the way in which he did the killing. It felt very like 80s horror-esque of if you were watching a slasher movie that took place in the 80s. And so I think Ty West did a fantastic job with that. And if you don't know who Ty West is, he's famous for these movies, obviously. And then he also did, what was the other movie that he did? He did The Sacrament, which is a movie that I haven't seen, but I heard that that's really good, that I want to watch. And then some of these other ones I haven't really, like he did Cabin Fever 2, like The House of the Devil. He did VHS, which I haven't seen. Maybe I'll watch that, see, how, he did the second honeymoon segment. And then in ABCs of Death, he did segment M is for miscarriage. And then his movie that I think that got him really big is Sacrament, and then The Valley of Violence. So I'll probably watch both of those. I think that it's worth watching just, because I thought that he did such a good job in X and Pearl. And if you go to the movies that they did before that, still pretty, gritty, I guess. And again, I don't know if like the budget got bigger, Maxxxine. I mean, I don't know. But like, I feel like you got these bigger stars in it and you didn't really need them. And they weren't like main characters in it. I mean, they were main characters, but they were like you could have done without them. I don't know. But it's a really good movie. One of the things that I do like in Maxxxine is they have the Psycho house in it, and the set from Psycho 2. And so I think that's really cool because Psycho is one of my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movies and one of my, favorite suspenseful and horror movies. So again, if you have to watch one, I would say 100% watch Pearl. If you want to watch all three of them and you want to dedicate it, then I would say watch X and then Pearl and then Maxxxine, because you don't really need to see Pearl first. And I think that because like people are saying, oh, well, Pearl's the prequel, watch Pearl first, but you don't have to watch Pearl to know what the hell's happening in X. So watching X makes more sense to me, and then watching Pearl, because you'll have better I don't know what's the right word. You'll feel better about watching. You'll want to know more about Pearl watching X first. So if you watch X and you're like, man, this woman's crazy and, she did a fantastic job, I want to know more about her, you would go and watch Pearl. Or like if you watch Pearl, it doesn't give you any information that you would need to have in X to watch it. So for me, watching Pearl first doesn't make any sense. I would always recommend watching X if you're going to watch all three of them first. But if you just have to watch one, hands down, watch Pearl, because Mia Goth's performance in it is just freaking amazing. And I don't know if because I wasn't like really, they came out in 2022 and I didn't really know about them. Right. So I think that I don't know if she got like a lot of critical reception, what's the word I'm looking for? Critical reception. Yeah. I don't know if she got good critical reception for it. But like Rotten Tomatoes has it, Pearl is an approval rating of 92% based on 211 views. Cinema Score gave it a B-. Like overall, the movie I would say was probably like a B, but her performance is freaking amazing inside of it. And I think she's really good in X. She's not as like, she's good in Maxxxine. Just, I think the story of Maxxxine could have been better to finish off the trilogy. So make sure that you see those. So again, this is my first try at giving some movies to you guys to watch. So for Halloween, watch, in fact, before Halloween's over, maybe you want to watch these. Watch them tonight. Watch them this weekend, unless you're in Arizona. Then come to see us at UbuCon. But watch It Chapter 1, It Chapter 2, Salem's Lot, I don't know. I watch it if you want, but it's not something that I think that you're going to go back to every year. It Chapter 1, I would probably go back to every year. Tales in the Hood is just so good. Just watch Tales in the Hood. And then out of the X trilogy, if you have to watch one of them, watch Pearl. If you want to watch all of them, watch X, Pearl, and then Maxxxine. And as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind, and we'll talk with you next time. Bye.
You were born in your dying, honey. I'm already crying for you.
Thank you so much for listening to The Age of Jeremy. You were listening to a lo-fi episode about, I guess, horror movies. If you like this podcast, go ahead and rate it, share it with someone so we can get it in front of more people, so we can share all the cool pop culture stuff that's going on in the world. And for the other parts or the other episodes, the main episode of Age of Jeremy, we can get more people understanding about how to run a business, helping them with their business, entrepreneurship, small business ship, I guess. So make sure that you share it with someone and give it a good rating, or give it an honest rating, and let me know what I could be doing better. I will appreciate that as well. The opening song was Gaslight Anthem, Positive Charge. The closing song was Gardens by Trevor Hall. I'm recording this into an H1N by Zoom. I think it's the second edition H1N that I have. I think they're releasing a new edition of it. You can buy one of these bad boys for cheap. You can get into podcasting right away. If you want to get into podcasting, reach out to me. I'll help you along the way. And we also have our For Everyone podcast network, Age of Radio. The Age of Radio Podcast Network, I should say. And so with that, one last time, be thankful, grateful, and kind, and I'll talk with you next time. Bye.